When I walked in, there was a glare on the bathroom mat, a reflection of the sunlight just starting to come through the blinds. It wasn't blinding, it just caught my eye. I looked down to see what was there. I was barefoot and didn't want to step on the glass or anything. Caroline didn't say she dropped anything in the bathroom, but who knows? I didn't notice it at first, since without the light it was almost the same color as the mat, but eventually I found it. A tiny circle of foil had fallen to the floor and reflected the light back into my eyes as I entered the bathroom. I picked it up. It was the backing from a pill cloud, the little circle of foil that squeezes out when a pill is squeezed out of the cloud. Most of the time it stays attached to the cloud, but sometimes, like this time, it separates and falls to the floor. I examined it. It was empty on one side, but the other side was labeled VT. Since today is Wednesday, I assumed that meant Tuesday, yesterday's pill. It meant that the pill was required to be taken daily. I knew I wasn't on any medication. I'm 35 and healthy as an ox, as is my wife, Caroline. We both recently had our annual physical exams and are recognized as healthy and fit. So why is there a pill cap in my bathroom? I knew there were a few pills that needed to be taken daily, but the one that immediately came to mind was the birth control pill. Caroline doesn't take birth control, or at least I thought she didn't since I had a vasectomy 2 years ago after the birth of our second and last child. She has no problems with cramping or period pain. She is one of those lucky ladies whose periods go off without a problem. So where did the pill come from? I have to admit that my first thought was that she probably has some kind of illness that she doesn't want to tell me about. My thoughts went to very dark places for a few minutes, but I remembered again about the physical and the reports we showed each other. We're both clean. If the little circle of foil is here, the pills are probably here too. I closed and locked the door. Caroline was still in bed, and began my search. It took a while to find them, but eventually I did. They turned out to be buried at the bottom of a tampon jar in a box of aspirin. Pulling out the pill cloud, I immediately recognized them as the ones she had been taking before I had the surgery, and even before that, between our children when we weren't trying to conceive. Why did she start taking the pills again? I only have one answer to that question. She is having sex with someone who can get her pregnant. She's cheating on me. Caroline and I have been together 9 years. I was just out of university studying to be an engineer, and she was working as an assistant. We met in a bar, and although we didn't hit it off right away, her interest was enough for her to accept my invitation to dinner. Caroline is tall, just a couple of inches shorter than my 5'78". She is a former athlete and has retained her athletic build, lean figure, and small breasts. Her butt, by far my favorite body part, is simply delightful. We had a courtship for about a year, and then we were married when I was 26. Our 2 children are 5 and 2, and I had surgery to prevent any further accidents. 2 is our limit. We have the perfect set. James was born first and then Sonia. I have the perfect family, or so I thought. Caroline has returned to work after maternity leave for each of the children, not wanting to leave a job she loves. We have an au pair who comes to look after the kids during the day and goes home in the evening. She costs almost as much as Caroline earns, but Caroline doesn't care. She just wants to get out of the house working at a job she loves. I worked with a couple of buddies, setting up an engineering firm together. We were never rich, but we all had a lot of fun. I cleaned up the bathroom, put her pills back where they belonged, and decided I should think about it. There's no point in confronting her right now. I need a plan. I need proof. What would happen after that, I had no idea. Let's get all the facts together first, and then we'll see where it leads. As usual, I went to work and pondered my options. First, I want to know who and when. Also, how long ago? Was it someone at work, heaven forbid, her boss? Was it the man she had been socializing with since we met? This led me to the next horrible question. Are these kids even mine? All this time, I didn't let my emotions interfere, knew it would happen, that I would feel the loss, the betrayal, the hurt, and the anger. But first I need to figure out if it's really there. I'm working on the problem, and I don't have enough facts yet to draw any conclusions. So I got on the internet. The first thing I needed was DNA testing kits. Testing children is, child's play. I often put them to bed before Caroline arrives, so it can be done easily. I also ordered some surveillance equipment. A couple small voice recorders that I could hide in her car and bag, and a few tiny cameras that I'll hide around the house. I doubt she does that here, considering she's a guest and rarely here when I'm not. At least, that's what I thought. I need access to her phone. I knew of a cloning tool that I could use to get a clone of her phone, get all her texts and emails, and even listen in on calls. This required me to buy another phone. It took a few days for everything to be delivered. During that time, I watched her closely. Caroline wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. Our sex life is pretty standard, once or twice a week, usually on weekends when we both lie in bed late. I never smelled any suspicious odor from her, and she never dived into the shower as soon as she got home. Nothing's changed. So either she's not having an affair, or she's exceptionally cautious, or she's been having an affair for so long that it's become second nature to her. Friday morning, the packages arrived. I sent them to my office, no questions asked. I got DNA test kits, dictaphones, several cameras, a cell phone, and a cloning kit. I was ready to go. In the afternoon, I left the office early. When I got home, the au pair was just feeding the kids dinner before putting them to bed. I left her to do that, and I went and hid the cameras. One in the bathroom, one in the living room, and one in the bedroom with a good view of the bed. I heard the kids splashing around in the bathroom, so I went to help them get ready for bed. Taking Sonia, leaving the au pair with James. I swabbed Sonia's cheek and put it in my pocket. Then I laid her down and read until she dozed off. When I looked in on James, he was still awake and the au pair was still reading to him. I offered to fill in for her and let her go home, and she gratefully agreed. It didn't take long to swab him, and in less than 20 minutes he was sound asleep as well. I packed up the swabs along with the swab taken from my cheek and put them in the mailbox. The mailman would pick them up in the morning. The service promised that the results would be available online within 48 business hours. So it was the last Wednesday. Caroline came home right on time and we went about our usual business. She told me about her day and I told her about mine, with neither side listening to the other. We had dinner and then she went to take a shower. I took this opportunity to install voice recorders in her car and bag, as well as clone her cell phone. I checked the clone to see if there were any incriminating messages or emails, but there were none. Either she's very careful or she's not cheating. I couldn't make up my mind. The weekend went as usual. Both mornings we had sex before the kids woke up. It had become almost a ritual, even almost a routine. If we could make it to climax before one or both kids woke up, we considered it a victory, about 50% of the time. Since she was always first, she almost always won. She had no calls or texts over the weekend, and since we spent all our time together, I had no way of checking to see if she was on the pill, although I did check the cloud, and the corresponding days were gone. Since it was just her and I in the house over the weekend and I wasn't on the pill, I made a fair assumption that she was on it. On Monday, I said I would work from home. She left for the office, and I took the opportunity to get thumb drives from all the cameras and check them. The bathroom camera confirmed that she was indeed taking pills, but the real surprise was on the bedroom camera. Saturday night, while I was making dinner, she went to take a shower. In the bedroom, I saw her using her phone to text someone. There was nothing on the phone I cloned, so she must have a second phone as well. It definitely wasn't in her bag, so where was it? I watched what she did with it as she finished texting. She went to the air conditioning duct and released the latch and opened it, hiding her phone inside. I immediately went and checked the air duct and found that the phone wasn't there. She must be hiding it there when she's home, but takes it with her when she leaves. I need access to that phone. It was the first concrete evidence that she was up to something, though I still didn't know what. There were signs that she was cheating, but it wasn't definite. I watched the footage of her getting dressed that morning and saw her take her phone out of the air conditioning unit and put it in her bag before leaving for the day. I need that phone. In the evening, when she got home, I watched her closely. She carelessly tossed her bag in the hallway and continued with her usual evening routine. After dinner, she went to take a shower and I looked in her bag. Her cell phone wasn't there. She must have taken it with her and hidden it in the air conditioning unit when she went upstairs. She didn't know or didn't care that on the other side of the vent was Sonia's room. Quietly, listening to see if there was any shower noise, I crept into my daughter's bedroom and opened the air duct on her side. There was a cell phone lying there. I grabbed it and carried it into my office, cloning it into a new phone in a couple minutes. I got it back and was about to close the vent when I heard my wife coming out of the shower. I walked over and sat by Sonia's bed, stroking her hair as my wife walked in. "Is something wrong?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "I like to come and sit with one or the other of them every now and then," I whispered, "just to remind myself how lucky I am to have two such wonderful children." She smiled. "You old sissy," she said. "Come on, let's go before you wake her up." I didn't review the phone clone until the next day. That's when my world came crashing down. The intercom sound from my secretary couldn't penetrate me as I sat in my office chair staring at the cloned phone, tears streaming down my face. Eventually, she apparently got tired of trying and knocked briefly before entering my office. She poked her head through the door and saw me. Michelle, my secretary, was a practical woman who dressed much older than her years. I would give her between 30 and 40. She is slim with red hair and green eyes. Always dresses conservatively, in clothes that would be appropriate on someone much older than her. Our relationship is always 100% professional. I've never even raised an eyebrow in her direction, though I've seen the result when someone does. It wasn't a nice thing to do. I had to talk to one of my business partners, known as the office catcher. He was flirting with her because he couldn't stand the thought that there was a woman who wouldn't succumb to his charms. She explicitly told me that if he didn't quit, she would and sue the company not only for involuntary termination at will, but also for sexual harassment. She said that the only reason she hasn't done it yet is because I always treat her with respect and never do anything I shouldn't do. My business partner was furious and wanted to fire her immediately. He gave us an ultimatum. Either she leaves or he does. So I owned 60% of the company instead of the 40% I started with. I was one partner short. When Michelle saw me, she immediately retreated, obviously to deal with whatever it was she was trying to call me about. I heard voices in my waiting room, and then everything went quiet. Michelle went back into my office, closed and locked the door, then walked over and pushed the chair on the other side of my desk and sat facing me about half a meter away from it. She pulled out some napkins from where women always seem to have a supply and held them out to me. I took them blindly and began wiping my eyes. "Tell me about it." That's all she said. I showed her my phone. There were texts from Caroline and back to her. The other party wasn't named, no names were used, but they all talked about secret meetings and sex that seemed to go on forever. Whoever it was knew her well, talked about things only I should have known about. The little mole on the inside of her thigh, the cute squeak she makes. There were other details that only a lover could know, and not just a one-off, but long-term. I was never mentioned in any of the texts. It was like I didn't exist. No, he's out, or he said or did this or that. I just wasn't there. Not even a belated thought. "Do you know who?" she asked, still remaining businesslike. I shook my head. "How did you know?" she asked. I told her about finding the little silver circle on the bathroom floor, then about the pills. The story just flowed. The whole time I was talking, she just sat there looking at me. After a while, I realized she was holding my hand. This is the first time, I thought, that we've actually touched each other. "You need more information," she said. "The baby's DNA will be in on Wednesday. Will you be able to hold out until then?" "I don't know," I said. She nodded. "Our producers in Portland need to see you right away," she said. "I've booked you on the next flight. You'll be back on Thursday." "I can't think about that right now," I said. "Here's what you tell Caroline," she said. She picked up my phone, typed a text message for Caroline, and sent it. "Something happened in Portland. We need to go and figure it out. I'll be back on Thursday. Love you." The reply came almost instantly. "Okay. Let me know you got there. I'll see you when you get back." She stared at the phone for a second with her lips curled, then handed it back to me and pulled out her own. "Lorraine," she said. "Michelle, yes, thank you. Are you completely free this afternoon? Great, I'll see you then." "Go get cleaned up," she said to me in a businesslike tone of voice. The tone of voice, and the fact that I was almost accustomed by her to doing in the office what she told me to do, meant that I did exactly that. It was actually good not to think. Shifting decisions and plans to someone else. When I came out of the bathroom, she was holding my jacket. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You have an appointment with an old friend of mine," she said. I silently went. Lorraine, as it turned out, was Michelle's best friend and also a divorce attorney. She had apparently also handled Michelle's divorce when Michelle discovered her husband was sleeping with one of his co-workers. Michelle was explaining the situation to Lorraine, and I watched on, almost in a state of numbness. This is not happening to me. Lorraine has obviously seen this happen many times in her career. Once she had all the facts we had, she turned her attention to me. "Gary," she said. "It wasn't me, she was talking to someone else." I felt a burning sensation in my cheek. Michelle had slapped me. It shocked me, and I came to my senses. I saw shock and amusement in Lorraine's eyes, but they quickly disappeared when she looked at me. "Gary?" she asked. I nodded. "Do you have any idea what you want to do with this?" That made my engineer brain wake up. Plans are what he's good for. "Kill them both," I said. I expected at least a shocked exclamation from Michelle, but surprisingly, she even grinned. "Okay," Lorraine said. "I understand that, but unfortunately it's not an option. You see, it's against the law. However, we have several legal options. Let's explore them, shall we?" "Before I begin," she said, "I'm just laying out your options, not advocating for any of them. That can come later. The first option is to do nothing. She doesn't know that you know, as far as I understand, you seem to have had a perfectly happy life before, and that doesn't have to change. Keep it up. Play ignorance. Second, amicable divorce. File for irreconcilable differences, split your company, house, 401k. She makes less money than you do, so you will probably have to pay child support for at least a few years to support her and the kids until they graduate from high school. Third, go nuclear. Sue for adultery. If the children are not yours, sue for false birth certificate. Sue whoever the other party is for alienation of affection if he is the father. Sue to get back all the money you spent on the kids if it's a coworker. Sue for not following the fraternization policy. Almost every company has such a policy these days. If the other party is married, give his partner all the information about the affair. If they know, we may also have a case against them. And if not, I may be able to represent them in the divorce. Go public, tell everyone, girlfriends, relatives, co-workers. If she is a member of any societies or church groups, tell them too. Humiliate her as much as you can. We need to protect your assets, sell your stake in the company to an offshore trust, mortgage the house, take everything you can. Take the cash along with the money you will get from the company, cash out your 401k and party in Vegas. My thoughts whirled through my head. I instantly realized what she was talking about. Option 1 was not an option. I wasn't anyone's willing cuckold. I'd been an unwilling, unconscious cuckold for too long. Option 2? Not a chance. I'd spent too much time building a business and creating the lifestyle we had. She can forget about taking half of everything I have and then let me support her while she sleeps with someone else. The third option, I said. Nuclear. Lorraine smiled. Okay, I'll start the paperwork. I'd suggest we start covert surveillance on your wife and try to find out who, when, and where. We really need more evidence. Can I keep this phone? You can see it's not doing you any good. I nodded and handed her the phone. Michelle and I left Lorraine's office and she drove me to a small family-run hotel, booking me a room. Go take a shower and bring something to the room, she said. She took full charge. I'll be back later with some things for you. I acted mechanically. My whole world was crumbling, and I sat in my hotel room and ordered room service food as if I were on a retreat. It was the only way I could deal with the stress of what was happening. 9 years down the toilet. What really hurts is that I was completely oblivious to all of this. How did I not notice what she was doing? Who was it, the boss she ran to after every baby? She said she liked the work and independence, but was that the real reason, or could she just not be away from her lover for so long? I looked speculatively at the minibar and was about to give in when Michelle walked into the room. Don't even think about it, she said. I need you to think, not drown your sorrows. You need to plan, and you can't do that if you're looking at the world through the bottom of a bottle. Plan? I asked sullenly. I tried it. I had a plan, and the plan was good. I had a loving wife and 2 gorgeous kids, and now look where I am. I have a whore in my wife, and I don't even know if those 2 kids are mine. I'm the biggest cuckold in the world. My whole life has fallen apart, and you want me to plan it all out? For a few moments she stared at me. I waited for her to say something, maybe sympathize, maybe even hug me. Then she looked at her watch. "Okay," she said, all businesslike. "The pity party is over. How many times when we were starting a company have you run into obstacles and your plans fallen through?" "What does that have to do with anything?" "How many?" she insisted. "Well, I don't know," I said. "A whole bunch. There was the time the patent office lost a patent application for an inversion thread, and we won that deal from Headingley's. There was the time the bank tried to foreclose on us early because they were under pressure. There was a time—" "Okay," she said. "At what point in all those cases did you sit down, put your head in your hands, and give up?" "That was different," I said. "Why?" she asked. "What was different in those times?" "I had something to fight for then," I said. "I had a family that depended on me. I had—" "And now you have a family," she said. "That depends on you just as much. And it's much bigger than the one you have back home. 141 people and their families depend on you to get through this. None of your partners are capable of keeping the company afloat. You're all engineers, but of the 3 of you, you're the only businessman. If you lose, the company loses." "You think that bitch cares about the families that depend on your company? If she gets half, she'll sell it to the highest bidder and you'll lose control of the business. You know who'll buy it, and everything you've worked for will be owned by Headlings. Is that what you want?" I stare at her. She's right. I've worked too long and hard to let it all go to whoever gives that whore, my wife, more money. I need to get things in order to secure my future and the future of my family. If the kids are mine, I will make sure they are taken care of. But as for Caroline, well, she made her own bed and could have whoever she wanted in it. I could mourn that relationship when I was sure everything else was in order. My morass dissipated, and, driven by anger and determination, I sat down with Michelle and began to make plans. I was going to secure the future of the company and take care of the only family I had left. It was the moment I made that decision that everything fell into place. The pain was gone, the indecision was gone. I didn't have any doubts. Michelle saw the change in my expression and nodded satisfied. "That's exactly the kind of Gary I need right now," she said. "Someone who knows how to plan for the future." We spent the rest of the evening making plans on how to secure the future of the company. At first, I was in favor of selling my shares in the company to the partners, but Michelle rejected the idea. She felt that I couldn't trust them to run the company, and I wouldn't be able to leave it in my hands when they became majority shareholders. They would bring it down to the ground. I need to retain control. We eventually decided that we could set up an offshore trust to which I would sell the company at market value. I will then remain in the same trust as a minimum wage CEO. I will earn virtually nothing. Since the trust is offshore, the courts will have no jurisdiction over its records, so the owners of the trust will not be known. I am now a millionaire, at least on paper, or will be when this is all done. I need to get rid of all this capital. I also need to cash out my 401k and get all the equity out of the house. Although we were together when we bought the house, it's in my sole name since Caroline wasn't working at the time of purchase, sitting with James, and the mortgage counselor told us it would be easier to put the loan in my sole name since she wasn't making any money at the time. I made a list of what I needed to do and wrote to my solicitor dealing with the company's legal affairs to arrange an appointment for the next day. After Michelle left, I showered and went to bed, not expecting to fall asleep quickly, but I passed out almost immediately as soon as my head touched the pillow, and slept until the alarm on my phone woke me up the next day. On my phone was a text message from Caroline. "You didn't say when you were coming over. Is everything okay? Sorry, I was planning late. Then I fell asleep. It's all coming together now, and I should be back Thursday. Okay. I'll see you, love you." I didn't reply to this message. I just couldn't bring myself to type those words. A little after 8, Michelle knocked on my door. I had showered again and was just contemplating going out for breakfast. "Breakfast," she said. indicating that I should follow her. We went to the diner on the next street over and sat in a booth eating pancakes with maple syrup and bacon. Part of me couldn't understand why I was acting this way. It was like my world hadn't collapsed and my heart hadn't been ripped out. I reasoned that at some point, when the dust settles, it will all come crashing down on me, but I wasn't looking forward to it. In the meantime, I have work to do. "Brian Spencer called," Michelle said, giving my lawyer's name, and said he had a time at 10 to meet us. "We can go to your bank first and cash out your 401k and release the equity in your house before we get there." "I realize it's worth it to consolidate my money," I said, "but there's still a record that I had it all. Can't the court just order me to pay her half?" "Only if you still have them," Michelle said with a smirk. "That's where Vegas comes to the rescue. Once you have all that capital, you go and spend a week in Vegas and blow it all before you file for divorce. That way, when you're evaluated in court, you'll be poor. In fact, you'll be in debt. The bank will foreclose on your house and your paycheck will be barely enough to live on. That's assuming the kids aren't yours. If they are, you'll just put your 401k in trust for them in their college fund. Caroline won't be able to touch it. Technically, she'll be making more money than you. She can pretty much afford the house on her own and may even end up paying you alimony. When do you get the DNA results?" "The company said the results should be online sometime today," I said, picking up the phone. I checked the email the company had sent me. There was a link which I clicked on. I watched the page load, but then put the phone down. I wasn't sure I was ready to see the results yet. "May I?" Michelle asked, and I pushed the phone towards her. She took it and looked at the screen, scrolling up and down a few times. I watched her face, searching for clues, trying to anticipate from her expression what she might say. She looked up from the phone. "The results aren't in yet," she said. "According to the tracking data, they should be available within the next 12 hours. I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. "Let's go," she said, standing up. "The bank should be open by now." Releasing the equity in the house and cashing out my 401k took surprisingly little time. I closed all of our savings accounts, including the kids' education funds, and transferred the money to an account I opened in my own name. The only account I left untouched was the joint account we used daily. There was less than $10,000 in that account anyway. My lawyer stuck a huge oar in our plans, but if it can be done nicely, he did it. "You're forgetting one thing," he said when we laid out our plan to him. "You have a prenup." "Do I have one?" I asked in surprise. I had no idea. "It was a condition of the partnership agreement when you started," he reminded me. All partners had to sign a prenuptial agreement that would protect the company in the event of a breakup. It only covers the company, but she has no rights to the company's assets. For divorce purposes, you are an employee of the company, and so at best she can claim your salary and 401k, and that's it. "What I would suggest," he said, "and I don't mean anything bad about your divorce attorney's plan, is to use all the equity you have freed up from the house and your 401k and invest in the company. Buy out the share of one of your partners. I know Robert has hinted at wanting to invest. You don't have enough funds to do this, but you could take out a loan from the company's retirement fund to make up the difference. The payments would come out of your paycheck, which means your income would be much lower when you are assessed for assets. And since everything else would be tied up in the company, it is untouchable. Your credit rating will suffer when the bank forecloses on your home and you will lose half of whatever is left in your bank, but other than that, it will gain nothing. We'll be able to make your paycheck less than hers, so she may even end up having to pay you alimony." "What am I supposed to live on?" I asked. "If my entire paycheck is tied up in loan payments, I'd still need somewhere to live and eat, not to mention the fact that I also have 2 kids. I paused. "At least I think." "Let's wait with the kids," he said. "Have you decided what you'll do if they're not yours? Will you still be involved in their lives?" "I don't know," I said. "The thought is too horrible to think about. I'll have to wait until I know for sure before making such decisions." "Don't forget the other parts of your plans for the other attorneys," he reminded me. "I bet you'll get enough money from the lawsuit against her company to pay off the loan and get back to getting a full paycheck when this is over, not to mention claiming back expenses from the children's father if it turns out they aren't yours." Since this would happen after the divorce, it would not be considered part of the settlement agreement. Could you contact Robert on my behalf and see if he's interested in selling his share? I asked. I'm not sure I'm capable of doing that at this point. He nodded. I'll give him a call and then I'll let you know. We shook hands and walked out of his office. I was relieved as we walked out of the building. The plans were starting to come together, which always gave me a sense of deep satisfaction. Then I remembered where we were making these plans from. My relief vanished, and I felt an emptiness in my chest. We were sitting at the diner eating lunch when I dared to look at my phone again. Once again, I couldn't bring myself to do more than click the link in the email before handing the phone to Michelle. I watched her face again, waiting for the reaction that was supposed to tell me if I was the father or not. I'm sorry, Gary, she said quietly. It was the most non-business-like response I'd ever seen. She handed me the phone and I read the results myself. Neither child was biologically mine, though they had the same father, just not me. The double blow of losing both of my children was replaced by the rage I felt at the betrayal. Not only had she passed these two children off as mine, but she had convinced me to have a vasectomy, which meant that I would now be unable to have children of my own. Gary! Michelle barked, bringing me back to my senses. This is not the time or place. Get a grip. We'll get through this, I promise. I took a few deep breaths, suppressing my anger. I really wanted to do some serious physical damage to someone. I even thought about hiring a hitman and killing the bastard who gave birth to the children that were supposed to be mine. Michelle got me under control again and led me out of the diner. Lorraine called, she said. She wants to see you. And we headed for Lorraine's office.